I am discovering me. Discovering me. My identity was hidden, taken from me, long before my ancestors began hanging from trees. The serpent, he was the real thief, deceiving my sister Eve. He made me forget I was royalty. My father is a king. I am the daughter of the everlasting, loving, omniscient three. He came to give me life. This world wants to take it away. He never intended for it to be this way. Free will, a blessing and a curse. Say my name. My life matters. God said it first. Discovering me. Redefining my identity. Made fearfully and wonderfully, flaws and all, my destiny was altered when I heard his call. I can't see where I'm going, but I know what I'm leaving behind. My faith is blind, lamps at my feet as I shoulder his load. I feel light, I see life as I walk the Samaritan road. On this episode of Discovering Me, I have Cheyenne White. Cheyenne White is going to be talking about what it means to her for suffering to produce perseverance. Cheyenne is a mental health professional and also a certified holistic life coach. Cheyenne's goal is to prioritize wellness needs and to walk in obedience to God. Cheyenne shares her personal story on how suffering has produced perseverance in her life and also what inspired her to want to become a mental health professional and a certified holistic life coach. Hello everyone, it's Nori here, and today I want to talk to you about Anchor by Spotify. It's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. So Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. The music that you hear on my podcast, when I have to edit people's conversations on my podcast, I do it all on the Anchor app. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There are about 8 or 10 different places you can post your podcast just using Anchor. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all, it's totally free. So if you are interested in starting a podcast, I suggest that you download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So when I think about suffering and perseverance, it brings me back to about 20 years ago. So what happened a little bit before 20 years ago is that my father had passed away.
Gotcha.
And he wasn't the dad that I needed, right? So when he died, I actually hated him more than when he was alive because I felt that it was easier for him to die than to apologize for not being the dad that I needed.
Yeah.
And because I come from a family, which is common for people of color, we don't talk about emotion. We don't share emotion and any of those things, right?
Right.
So now here I am, stuck with all of these emotions that I didn't know what to do with.
Right.
And it turned into anger. It turned into bitterness. It started to affect my mental health. And it took someone to come to me to say, would you like to speak to somebody? Like, I think you need to talk to somebody. Because it was spiraling, right?
Right.
There were nights that I would go to sleep and I would say to myself, this is the last night you're going to be here. Like, that's how much of a toll that it started to play on my mental health. Like, I got up in the day, I did what I needed to do concerning my family. But once it was nighttime and once I was alone with my own thoughts, it would come to the point where it was like, this is the last night for you. Like, you're not right. So eventually I did go speak to someone. And that's when my transition from being raised as a Catholic transitioned over to born again Christian. And it was through that relationship, that development that I needed. And even when I think back to when I was younger, I recall saying to my aunt, I'm not going to always go to the Catholic church, right? But not knowing that that was what really was going to happen. So it was just because I won't say, but I just knew Because even when I was going through that time, I had returned to the Catholic Church, but it just wasn't enough for what I needed. And so when someone recommended, oh, maybe you should come talk to someone at the church, I went. And I would meet with her once a week. We would talk about just how I was feeling and the things that, you know, I experienced some of it as a child, and then how I felt about my dad with his death and things of that nature. And then one Sunday, I came to service. And then that's when my life changed. So it was just my walk with God, knowing that I didn't have to go through what I was going through alone.
Right.
And leaning on him, trusting in him, you know, building my prayer, building my walk with him, friends who were removed, and how he changed things and brought in believers and who talked to me, who prayed with me, who ministered to me, who supported me. So it was during those times of couldn't find a job, dealing with the death of my father, trying to figure out who I am still as a young 20-something-year-old, responsible for a family. And it's like, who am I in the midst of all of these things?
Right.
Because I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Who is she? And what does she need? Right. So it was getting to a place of becoming self-aware of who Cheyenne really was, right? Aware of who she was as a young woman, who she was as a caregiver, who she was as a person, as a believer, as a child of God. And it's during that time just coming into a place of, what does ministry now mean to me? So taking my love of dance and taking it from what I did when I was outside to now becoming a minister of dance within the church, right? Being used after I graduated with my master's in their counseling center, being used of God, you know, working with the youth. So whether it was with their summer camp or whether it was with their Friday night youth. So just watching how what I went through and how God changed those things around for me over time. And it's not to say my life is perfect, because it's definitely not. But just knowing that I don't have to trust in myself, that there is a higher power. There is the, you know, God who is there, who's walking with me, and the Holy Spirit that guides. So just with all of those things, just remembering he got you.
I love that. I love that so much. And how did you overcome the anger towards your father and like dealing with that?
It was just processing. So having an opportunity to not only sit with the deacon that I would sit with once a week, but just becoming more aware of myself, right? And understanding that what those emotions were actually causing internally inside of me, because aside from it affecting my mental health, it was also affecting my physical health, right? So it was getting to a place of, I can't live this way.
Right.
And that's really what it was. It was, if I'm saying that I am believing in God, I'm trusting in God, I'm changing my, you know, doing things different within my life, I can't walk around with a spirit of anger.
Right.
I can't walk around with a spirit of bitterness, because it serves no purpose, at least not a healthy purpose in what it is that God wanted to do with me and where he was taking me. So I had to get to a place where it's, Cheyenne, you have to let that go. And that's one of the things that I've made a commitment to myself, that no matter how upset I may get at times with a situation or with another person, that not to be angry, because I know what was happening to my body, because it was almost like, I don't want us to go too far, like a parasite. I'll just say a parasite, right? So it was literally sucking the life from me, right? So since I'm at a place where I just want to live, right? I just want to be happy. I just want to have joy in spite of situations and in spite of circumstances. So what do I need to do in order to make that happen? You have to, you know, it was acknowledging, this is how you feel. This is what you need, so that I can walk away from feeling the way that I may feel.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. Your story is impeccable. I am so inspired. I think it's really, I love talking about mental health in the Black community, because I feel like We just don't talk about it. We're like, push through, keep going, don't deal with it. We don't have time for that. We got to keep moving. And it hinders us and we don't even realize it. Like, it's crazy to me, like just from even my own journey and even hearing what you said, like how it manifests itself physically. It's crazy. It blows my mind. And that's why I love having these conversations, because I feel like it opens those doors and helps people to see like, oh, wait, maybe that thing that I'm struggling with isn't just that. Like maybe there's something deeper there. And I really think that there's going to be a lot of healing found through just sharing your story. So in your bio, it said that you were a mental health professional and a certified holistic life coach. So would you like to explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. So, I want to say prior to or leading up to around the time when my dad died, I was working on finishing my associates. Actually, I'm going to take it back a little bit further.
Go for it.
Just a little bit. So when I want to say 18 or 19, I still couldn't quite remember. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And I remember saying to a family member, it was either I wanted to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And they said to me, only crazy people do that, right? So it deterred me. And I got into business. So I went to a community school, did a 2-year program, and I didn't really like it, right? But then all of those life transitions were happening, those changes. And one day, you're helping all these people, like write their papers and all these things, and all these people are returning to school. You might as well go back. But then I'm like, what am I going to go back for? And I remember sitting in the hair salon, getting my hair done. And I looked over to someone who was under the dryer, and she had a textbook in her hand, and it said psychology. And the Lord said, that's what you're going back to school for.
I love it.
So I enrolled, I finished, and then it was a struggle also to still kind of find work, because in those transitions, God is still working on me. And eventually I was able to find a full-time job, and I kept saying, I want to go back to school, but I don't know what I want to go back for.
Right.
So I went, maybe I'll be a teacher. Maybe I'll go into guidance counselor, social worker. And then one day I'm on the train and there's a billboard, and it said Nyack College Mental Health Counseling. And once again, the Lord said, that's what you're going back to school for. So that's pretty much how I got into the field of mental health. He deposited it.
Yeah. He
said, this is what I want you to do. And it's been healing for myself, because even in that program, we had to go to counseling. So I was totally against it. I'm like, why do I need to waste time and go to counseling? But I want to say it was by the second year of that program, I couldn't get to the counselor's office fast enough because it had brought up so much anxiety. So here we go again in regards to my own mental wellness, because now I'm under so much, when I say so much stress, especially that last year, I'm at the cardiologist, I'm at the doctor's office, I'm getting tested for allergies. The body was shutting down because it was under so much stress and under so much pressure, right? And I just kept going, and I just kept going. No, I got to finish it. And I remember some things were going on with my family, and the therapist that I was seeing, she was like, you don't think, maybe you should just take a year off? And I'm like, no, I got to keep going. I have to finish this. And that was really what it was. Like, I didn't want to break and then have to return. It was, I just need to finish. And so I did finish, and I stayed at the job I was for a little while longer. And then I transitioned out in order for me to work on my clinical hours. And so by saying it was therapeutic, it's when I came to realize just about my family. So there were two things that came up. One was my grandmother suffered from dementia. And I remember talking to the family counseling direct professor after class one day. And she said to me, you're experiencing grief. And I didn't realize, I think it was at that moment is when I realized that you can experience grief, not just based off when a person dies, right? that you can experience grief when you're watching the changes within that person who's no longer the way that you remember them.
Yeah.
The second thing within that same class is one day I'm sitting, at my desk, and I look out the window, and the window is facing a brick building. And it was based off what we're learning, your family might be a little dysfunctional. And that's when the realization came that, no, we don't have it all together.
Right.
No, we're not perfect, but that's okay.
Right.
And when it really came down to that last year, another professor said, "You've been persevering." And that was her words to me. Because I was up against so much. I was going to class full time. I was in a full-time internship. I was still trying to take care of my home, as well as a full-time employee as an assistant director.
Right.
So it was all of these things that I'm trying to manage on top of trying to take care of myself. And I was literally falling apart at the seams. And I had to put things in place. So this is how the holistic aspect comes in. So because there's so many women in the field that I'm in, who are dealing with similar issues, right? Similar things, who also need support. But because I have a relationship with these people, there's no way I would be able to be their counselor.
Right.
So how can I support the women that I know on a deeper level? And that's by becoming a holistic life coach.
I love that.
Because I don't want to leave people out, and I know that I could be of a great support and a great help to them. How can I, right? Because they're coming to me.
Right.
So how can I actually support them? And it was doing that.
Wow.
That transition to do both. Because I don't also believe that everyone needs counseling. I think everyone can benefit depending on what stage and phase they are in their life. But if they're not a person who needs counseling, how else can you support them based off of what they're experiencing?
Right.
And that's where the coaching comes in.
Okay, cool. I love that. And so what advice would you give to someone who might be in a season of suffering right now and they're just like, I don't see the way out. I don't see how I'm going to get help. I'm stuck.
I would say the first thing is to acknowledge, right? Be truthful to yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can know that something is going on, but we ignore it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's about being self-aware of the changes that are happening within yourself, whether it's within your body, whether it's within your mind, right? So self-aware, acknowledging that something is wrong, speaking up, right? Because you can't get help if you stay quiet, right? You can't fix whatever you're going through if you don't say something is wrong and I need support.
Right.
And then take action. So it's not enough to say, I need help, or this is an issue that I'm having, and say something, but then do nothing. So action is really important. Look at your support system. Who do you have? Because sometimes people say, there's nobody that can support me. There's one person. Mm-hmm. If you really sit and think about who's surrounding you, so whether that is a close family member, whether that's a close friend, depending on your finances and your insurance, maybe you do need to seek support from a counselor.
Right.
If it's not that deep, it could be someone from your church. Just ask for help and be trusting, because also we sometimes feel, I can't trust this person.
Right.
I can't really be vulnerable and say what's really wrong. So it's about also understanding why you may feel that way and getting to a place where you're going to say, listen, I have no choice at this point, right? Because if you don't make that decision, nothing's going to change.
Right.
You're going to continue the way that you are. So it's acknowledging it, speaking up about it, and then seeking the support that you need.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate it. And where can people find your services if they're interested, or if they just want to follow you on social media for little tidbits or anything like that, where can they find you?
So I am on Instagram, and you can find me at I am Shy White. I'm also on Facebook as Shy White, and then on LinkedIn as Cheyenne White.
Awesome.
As well as, if you want to send me an email, it's connect@shywhite.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing. I loved talking with you, and I think that this episode is going to be so impactful. So I'm super excited. Thank you for listening to this episode of Discovering Me. I hope that you are inspired and spurred on toward a deeper connection with God. If you're looking for a church in the Southern Connecticut area, search Southern Connecticut Church of Christ. And don't forget to tune in 2 weeks for a new episode of Discovering Me. And always remember to faithfully pursue a life of passion.